What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Aaron Rodgers. It wouldn't be Sunday night if we were not recording post-game therapy after a one-possession loss for the New York Jets. They kept stacking them up today. It's a little more unique than some of their losses, but in the end, 26-21, they lost to the Seattle Seahawks to drop to 3-9. Connor, how you doing? How you feeling? That was an entertaining loss, if nothing else, but had a lot of the same beats of a movie we've been watching on repeat most of this season and honestly for most of our lives.
It's a good way to describe it. It really was an entertaining loss. It was a chaotic loss. As you can see, I got home from the city out of my post-game suit and into my Charlie Brown Christmas good grief shirt, which is very fit, which is really just absolutely perfect for, what you witness this season. I think anyone who closely watches this team after the third quarter probably felt the script coming. Like it felt really different in much of the first half. And even when Rodgers throws, so much happened in this game. I want to make sure the timelines are all right. But even after Rodgers throws the pick six, which was a 14-point swing, because
an unbelievable sequence.
Right. like really, if he hits Garrett Wilson on the layup the play before, the Jets are up, 28-7? And instead the next play, you blink and it's 21-14. But really, they could have answered on that drive, because if I have it right in my scrambled brain right now.
It's 21-13. They blocked the PAT.
That's right. They blocked the PAT. But wasn't the Devontae fourth down juggle the next drive?
Yes.
And once again, with a better throw, and I get the side of it, like Devontae has to catch that. It's why he's a star receiver and he's paid that way. But a better throw, which is becoming the story of this season, and he's either still running or he just catches the ball, and they probably score on that drive. And it's 28-14, and the Jets are right back in control, and Seattle's chasing points. But at the end of the day, the reality is this is who this team is. Joe, the thing that I sat down and looked at after is sometimes you just got to be honest with yourself. You were gifted 2 possessions in favorable territory by unspeakable kick return woes from Seattle, and you still didn't win the game. My takeaway, if they coming out of this game, if they won, would have been, number one, okay, good, they won. They beat a first-place team. Like, this is kind of what we were hoping for this year. Your backs are against the wall. You got to win out. Very unlikely, but that's what we're going to talk about going forward. But my number 2 point, if they won, would have been the caveat that, that's the kind of breaks you kind of need at this point. The Jets finally got the breaks that they need. Basically, good teams take advantage of those. Great teams take advantage of those and also recover from their mistakes or really fluky, weird things. Because just because a kick returner can't hold on to a football doesn't mean a team is bad. That is truly one man's woes of a 53-man roster. But the reality is the Jets never take advantage of enough of mistakes, and they never overcome their woes, which is often penalties and mental errors. And here we go. The Jets lose again. And this is harsh to say on this podcast, so I'll close the open with this. How can you even feel like anger or emotion after that loss when you've watched the same damn thing a million times this year already?
Yep. Yeah, I think we're in a situation now, and the way I've kind of phrased it is I'm rooting for a win, but if they lose, it's easier to stomach. And if they're going to lose, let it at least be mildly entertaining, because the reality is they're not going to make the playoffs, and they're going to have a rebuild next year. They're going to have a new general manager and a new head coach and many new other pieces.
New quarterback too, yeah.
New quarterback, and we'll get into that. It's definitely heading strongly in that direction. Right now, and War Room this week is going to be fully dedicated to draft chatter. They're picking 6th. It's very tight. It's a bunch of 2-10 teams and 3-9 teams. The Jets could end up picking anywhere from 1st to 14th, depending on how these last 5 games go. So I'm tired of rooting for them to lose. I was rooting for them to win. At no point in this game was I expecting them to win. I picked them to lose 30-20. That's pretty much roughly what we got, an over game, even when they got some first half puck luck finally, right? They recovered a couple fumbles. They bring a guy off the practice squad. He returns a kick for a touchdown. Finally, they sit Gibson down. They get a break. They block a PAT. They're up 14-0. Every Jet fan who's watched this season and all your buddies who are texting you here go the Jets, look at them. It's just give it a second and relax. And this moment has happened multiple times this year where once Rodgers missed that throw, and what a waste of an absolutely gorgeous route from Garrett Wilson, which the true epitome of this season. Garrett running a perfect route, perfect, being wide open. Rodgers missing him, and the next play throwing a pick six to a former Jets first-round pick who's a defensive lineman who now has half as many picks as the entire Jets team this season, both of which are still by Brandon Eccles. Runs it back for a touchdown. And the game was kind of over then, right? Much like it was when Rodgers missed Garrett Wilson on what should have been a game-winning touchdown versus Minnesota, much like it was when one bounced off Rodgers' chest against Pittsburgh, or when Rodgers threw the interception before the half against Pittsburgh. You start to get a feel for when these things are done. And the Jets offense did nothing the rest of the game. The kick return got them to 21 in the second quarter. They didn't score a point the rest of the way. And Rodgers, much like he was in the Colts game and much like he was in the Cardinals game and much like he was in the Texans game, except for the second half when he threw it back to MVP mode, was terrible today. He was 21 of 39 for 185 yards. He can't even crack a 5 yards per attempt. If we were talking about Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold in their rookie years, we were always looking at that like he's like 4.8 yards per attempt. Like, how many guys in the NFL right now could have 39 attempts for 185 yards? And yes, he had 2 touchdowns. One was a shovel pass to Isaiah Davis. One was a very nice fade route to Devontae Adams, but he left points on the field. And yes, Devontae, should he make that catch because he's Devontae Adams? Yes. Should that be a walk-in touchdown when you have Aaron Rodgers? Yes, like make the throw, put it on him. And beyond that, there's no accuracy. There's no rhythm to the offense, it seems, once they get off Downing's script. And it just feels over. When you're talking about the wind in the post-game press conference you sound like Zach Wilson in 2022 after the Pats game, that's like the last level of being a Jets quarterback who can't be a quarterback here anymore. And I do think you can make – there's up to a point you've been able to make a rational argument to bring Rodgers back strictly from a football perspective. I think from not a football perspective, keeping him as the center of the universe in your franchise with a new GM and a new head coach and all the bad energy and vibes and inability to find a way to win a football game that this year would drag over, I think you just got to shake it off. He was just bad again today, and he keeps stacking up bad games like this. I think it becomes kind of an easy and obvious decision, and I don't think there were leaks before the game about him unlikely to be back by accident. I don't think anything's 100%, but there's only 5 games left, and the Jets kind of got their game today that there was going to be one game in the final 6 where they showed up and won, and you're like, whoa, where's that been? That happens every year. That might have supposed to have been today, and they still blew it because they're so inept at finding ways to win, and now – are they going to win in Miami? They've been dominated in Miami in the McDaniel era for all the flaws the Dolphins have. They're not winning in Buffalo. Rams, I'm never going to say anything about McVay and the Rams after 2020 and how burned I got in that game, but like hard to see them winning that game. And that kind of leaves you with Jacksonville and Miami. So there's not like that much time left for Rodgers to get hot and finish the season awesome and sell some false hope that the Jets have to run this whole thing back with him because he's bad. And when he's not, he's playing poorly or not playing to his standard. And everything that comes with that when you're heading into a rebuild doesn't seem to carry over. I don't want to just pick like the defense and the coaching is an abomination, but we know that the coaching is done, right? So Jeff Ulbrich having Gibson out there with his defense on 4th and 6 and then getting 4th and 1 and then getting a pass interference, they're going to fire the entire coaching staff and they're going to redo the entire front office. We know that already. I hope Ulbrich gets a DC job somewhere else. Clearly can't be a head coach. The defense, everyone's banged up every play. It's like, can we just kind of like reaching the point, like we just like sit some of these dudes down? Like, do we need them out there like playing through these injuries and coming off every 4 plays like Sauce is and Carter is? And then Brees, like, was he 100% today? Then he has a killer fumble. I'm rambling now. Let's bring it back to Rodgers. It felt like there was a lot of missed opportunities again. And I don't want to just box score scout here, but I think from watching the game and from you watching the tape and from rewatching the game every week, there's a lot of plays that are being left out there that actually make it look like his numbers probably make it look like he played better than he actually did. What did you see from the quarterback and the offense today?
Right. So before I go there, since you touched on it a little bit, and it's exhausting just killing this team every single week. The guys that I thought played well today, to name a few, before watching all of the All-22, I thought Olu played well at left tackle. You really didn't.
Important.
Very important. Like, you really didn't think about him out there today. And what magnified it was when Morgan Moses got hurt, how bad Carter Warren was. And I don't say that to like just kill Carter Warren, who's not a starting caliber tackle in the NFL. But Warren got smoked almost every rep in pass pro. And the reason it magnified Olu was you went, oh, damn. Like our left tackle is giving our quarterback all day to throw. And our starting right tackle was too, for the most part. And then he comes out and gets hurt. And now we remember what it's like to have a shitty tackle out there. That's the sign of a really good tackle when you start to remember the position because, oh, the backup's in and he's terrible. And now our offense can't function. So I think Olu's going to be really good. And I had just more confirmation of that today. The defense, Will McDonald, who, you know, the people that don't like him always go like, oh, he has the luckiest sacks ever. I mean, he whooped up on Charles Cross for a sack today, and then he went over to the right side, the other side, and had a sack. And he didn't finish on the spin move, and then he used his outside speed to win on the sacks. He's got 10 sacks this year, like great for Will McDonald. Sauce was awesome today, and Sauce kind of had the same effect with Olu that Sauce has something tweaked with his hamstring. Quantez Stiggers has to come in, and he gets the DPI on Metcalf, and that's a brutal spot for him. But you also notice, like, Sauce kind of had the clamps on DK all day, and then Seattle gets a DPI call on the Jets' fourth-string corner because Sauce is sitting out with the hammy. So Sauce was really, really good before that, and Quincy Williams was flying around making plays. Those were the guys that stood out to me without watching the tape. And they were, and, you know, there's some positives to take away from that because that's your rookie franchise left tackle. That's your number one corner that's had a really weird slump of a third year after 2 All-Pros, and you want him to bounce back and be a great player for this franchise. And Quincy, who's under contract to be here next year, is an All-Pro as well. And Will McDonald, who's a second-year pass rusher that got double-digit sacks, which, by the way, not a lot of people do that in a Jets uniform in the last 24 years. It's like John Abraham out of bench.
Let's never take 10 sack seasons for granted. They're so rare here.
Exactly. And then when that happens, you know, Bryce Huff leaves in free agency. So now let's get into all the Rodgers and the bad. I agree with you. Like your lead, he's worse than the numbers. He leaves big plays out in the field all the time. He really doesn't ever make it look easy for a pass catcher anymore, which is just jarring considering the way this man has played the position for how long. He was kind of the king of like the either catch and run ball or just dropping in dimes, outside the numbers. And the reality is it's just that the touch in the field is not there. I don't know if this is an Achilles thing. I don't know if it's from another injury. I don't know if it's rust. Sometimes you could just look in the mirror and say, you know what? Like, Father Time is undefeated. It really, really is. And maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. But the reality is for Rodgers, he's a one-pitch pitcher now. I mean, there was one play where he rolled out and he threw a ball down the sideline to Devontae. And Devontae was in one-on-one situation, and it was a gotta-have-it play. And there was no chance on the ball. Like, it wasn't even lofted to give him a chance to throw to Garrett at the end of the game. There's no chance on these throws. So, not to mention just the throws that he misses, like the one he missed to Garrett in the end zone. The quarterback's a problem. The Jets have plenty of problems, but the quarterback is right up there with the problems that they have. I don't know if he's just like drinking pre-workout before the game, and in the first quarter he wants to show everybody that he could run around like a maniac. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're in the third quarter and it's back to the guy's not moving. He's stationary back there. Yeah. So, there's a lot of issues. And I thought Downing clearly went home on the bye week and did his homework. They had so much movement created with this opening script of the game. In the second half, I feel like when I go back and watch that tape, they get back to being this, okay, Rodgers is calling everything because we're playing a little faster now, and then the same static offense. And then it's just little nitpicky things. I hate when they throw a screen to Gibson and not Corley. It just drives me. It's like one of those pet peeves that I'm like one of 7 people in the world that just wants to scream inside when I see that, but it really does drive me nuts. I have no idea why they drafted Corley. And Corley, they throw him a jump ball. And even Mark Sanchez on the broadcast, by the way, who I'm a big fan of as a broadcaster, Sanchez, and you got to give him a lot of credit for this because a lot of color guys don't do this much work. Sanchez studied Corley when he was a prospect and was like, I really liked him at Western Kentucky, but like, that's not his game. And it's like, and it's just weird. It feels like the Jets Willie said something last year, I remember, that really stuck with me. He's like, they're one of these franchises, and he said it on air. This isn't like some behind the scenes take. He said something along the lines of, it feels like the Jets are one of those teams that like they get a player that comes with the instruction manual and they just throw it out and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Why are they always not maximizing skill sets? They never throw the ball to Brees when it's crazy. I equaled it to 51st dates on postgame. Every week, they totally forget what happened the previous weeks where Brees catches a dump off and runs for 35 yards, making 3 people miss. I have no explanation for that. They don't get anything out of their tight ends at all, which is a massive problem in any offense, but especially in today's offense. And yeah, it comes down to it that Garrett, the thing that really just like pisses me off with Rodgers this season at this point is Garrett is notoriously a very unique, moving kind of player. I remember the people that didn't like him as a prospect, their whole rant was that he made too many moves into his release package and it would never work in the NFL. We all kind of can sit back and laugh at that because Garrett is an incredible NFL player. And it's not that he makes too many moves in his release package. It's that his movements are unorthodox. Remember during Hard Knocks when they were calling him Michael Jackson with the way he kind of, and like he's got the Gumby nickname? Rodgers, for whatever reason, just refuses to look at Garrett and go, this is a very unique player. Let me kind of adjust who I am to it. He just does the same shit every single week and and he always looks at the sideline after a missed throw. Like, oh, well, like I've been doing this for 20 years. He's officially reached the point of, the old guy yelling at the clouds where you're like sitting there and you're like, you know what, man? Like the world's different now. It's different than what it was 20 years ago. And you can go sit inside and read your black and white newspaper and bitch and moan all you want, or you can adapt. And he hasn't adapted. And you know what? That's fine. He's 41 years old this week, and he's coming off an Achilles. That's really hard to do. I'm not taking away anything he's done in the NFL or the adversity that he was facing to come back and be an effective player this year that most of us, me included, probably overlooked. But the reality is, it is what it is right now. And this cannot continue next year. It's a horrible environment for the players. He did the little side quote after, taking some blame that, there's 11 guys on the field, which is it's just infuriating. This team is looking to point the finger at someone but themselves. They need a total reset. It's why I will push and push and push that I don't care what it takes. Get a guy like Mike Vrabel in here because these guys need a reality check and they need somebody where they're unified and come together as a football team. And because of Rodgers, because of Salah's, to take your quote, mopey attitude that's unfortunately been passed down on to Ulbrich a little bit as much as he's trying his best, the team has lost being one unit. They are a collective group of individuals that when everything goes wrong, they want to point the finger at each other, the refs, some kind of weather impact. It doesn't matter anymore. You are a 3-win football team. You operate like a 3-win football team. You have a lot of talent, and the right coach next year could surprise the league and get a lot of wins out of these guys. But right now, it is clear they started over at head coach, they're starting over at GM, and they need to start over at quarterback because unfortunately it's having an awful trickle effect on this team.
They have to fumigate the whole thing because this entire regime is clouded by that woe is me mope finger point that is trickled to the defense, as you pointed out. And Rodgers is just notorious for this year. And in his career at different times, it's different when he's playing at a higher level on the offensive side of the ball this year. And, Breece Hall had 1 target today. That's insane. Jeremy Ruckert even had 2 targets. Conklin had 5 targets for 32 total yards. You have to ask, what are the Jets accomplishing with Aaron Rodgers giving Davante Adams 12 targets every single week? And how is that helping them going forward and turning the page? And I'm glad they got Davis made a couple plays, but him having 3 targets compared to Breece having 1 target, it's just the whole thing is messy. Once they get off a Downing script, it feels like it's right back to the 5-yard horizontal box and Rodgers dirting the 1-yard speed out to Davante. And then if it's 3rd and 4th and short, just sort of lobbing this sort of like back shoulder 3-point ball that is usually inaccurate 90% of the time. And it's a damn shame for Garrett Wilson. He had a really nice stretch where he was able to get going a bit. And it's kind of came back to earth a little bit the last 2 weeks where I just feel like it's hard for him to get in rhythm with how much the ball is being funneled to Davante. And look, Garrett ended up with 10 targets, but Rodgers missed a gimme touchdown to him, missed him a few times. And, Breece isn't without
calorie targets.
Exactly. They're empty. You're not using him to the best of his ability, just throwing him these little smoke screens and then missing him when you go down the field. Like there's a whole route tree that they're not unlocking with this guy. And he's still going to he's going to get over 1,000 yards for 3 straight years, which is incredibly impressive. I don't want to say Brees isn't culpable. He had another fumble that killed them. And he took accountability and said this has been the hardest year of his life and that he should have been benched for it. I feel bad for the dude watching him talk. And that's been a problem for him this year. He lost a killer fumble week 1. I think he lost another one in there as well. He has to be better than that. I'd like to see them use Allen more. Like they got him going a little bit in the first quarter. He had 2 catches for 16 yards. He didn't get a target the rest of the game. And you think about how excited we were about Allen after the Titans game where he looked like young Derrick Henry. And he's kind of been like put on ice in many ways the rest of the season. And if Brees is not 100%, sit him down for a few weeks. I think it's admirable if he wants to push and keep playing, but let's be smart. Let's not do what Saleh did last year and give him 41 carries in week 18 when the game doesn't matter. And as for Rodgers, I think the last comment is it's like we're at the point now where all these other major positions are going to be turned over. And I'm trying to rack my brain on what the best analogy is. It's almost like he'd be like Van Wilder next year, but not funny, just like obnoxious. It's like the guy who's like
weird.
Yeah, it's like the guy. It's like, hey, didn't you graduate like 2 years ago? Like, why are you still living in like these like undergrads like house? Well, like I'm chipping in. I got the extra room, and it's like, listen, we're juniors and seniors now. We don't need the 7th year post grad guy here, like talking about this and making jokes that aren't relevant anymore and telling us to read a bunch of crap we don't want to read. It's like it's just over. You got to hand the locker room to like a new generation and a new class of people in that analogy. It's just, you could tell when it's time and it feels like it's time. I can't visualize them bringing him back next year and that being a good idea. And I don't know if he ends up playing all final 5 games. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but you're at a certain point now where, like you said, the Jets are 3-9. They're basically as good as Carolina this year and Jacksonville with everything that all those teams have dealt with, and the Giants, who I believe as it stands right now have the first pick in the draft. And it could be starting Tim Boyle before the season's over. So, for the Jets, look, I'll say this, outside of the Arizona game, most of this year has not been them like laying down and dying. They're in all these one possession games, which I think from a sales pitch perspective, beyond all the money and all the other stuff for the new GM and head coaches, like, look, like we were right there against Denver, Minnesota, the Colts, the Patriots, the Seahawks. Like these were all one possession games where Rodgers had the ball in his hand late. Some of these games are on the defense. Some of them are on Rodgers, but they're not like getting blown out, and they will get blown out at least once or twice in these final 5 games. I can't really think at Miami will be one of those games, but let's see. But they're not getting dog walks. So there's something there in that in this situation where everyone knows that this regime is toast and a lot of guys are going to be gone, they are like showing up. They just don't know how to win. They don't know how to win. They don't have the necessary leadership at the key spots. Mosley's not really part of the team this year. Rodgers is in his own little world. Morgan Moses has been banged up. He got hurt again today. And what you hope for in these final 5 games is more of like, Fashion, who played really well. He's definitely going to be a good left tackle for us next year. That's a huge development. Cool. All right. Can we get a little more out of Allen? Is there something there with Davis? Can Corley show anything where he's part of it for the next regime? Can Sauce get his confidence and swagger back a little bit? Can he fall into a 2-interception game and like score a touchdown and have a nice moment this year and go into the offseason feeling good? Quincy, Quinnan, keep playing well. McDonald, run up your sack total, get 12 or 13 and have it be one of the best sack seasons in Jets history. Those things matter. You are going to hit a point pretty soon, though, I think, where they're going to start shutting down some guys, I think, that are borderline. That's probably going to be the right decision. Now, where that call comes from at this point, I don't know. But I think this is going to be one of those seasons where the last 2 games of the year, the guys out there, it's going to be a mix of like practice squad players and like just kind of throwing anyone out there. So we'll see. I can't say in any way I'm shocked by what happened today. I think we'll probably see a somewhat similar result next week, if not slightly a little more of a wider gap, just because they haven't played this version of Miami well. And, we'll talk about it again, like I said, on War Room more, how the draft is going to fit in all this. What are your final thoughts on this one today? Only 2 more home games left for the faithful at MetLife this season.
Man, the people that have attended majority of the games, like you just got to be sitting there wondering each time, how did they keep allowing this to happen? Why can't they finish games? And why are they making these mistakes? But it's another tough one. I feel really bad for the fans, as I always do. And I really feel bad for the young players in the locker room that are going to be a part of this team next year, no matter what, that they really, it's such a stupid thing to say, but like it just amplifies how poor, like necessary they need to get this hire right, because they need the buy back in the worst kind of way, because how this coaching staff is going out, how the GM went out, and how this quarterback is going out have sunk the vibes into absolute like toxic wasteland levels. And it's not impossible to rebuild. I mean, look around the league. You know, sometimes guys go in and look at like Arizona right now. That roster is not even as good as the Jets. It's not. And they're a team that they go out there and they compete and they fight. You know, look at Denver right now. And I'm not a Sean Payton guy at all. I'll be the first one to tell you that. But Denver is competing in a year where they weren't expected to compete. Washington, same story. On and on it goes. So the Chargers, the Steelers roster this year, but Mike Tomlin's a different beast. You're not going to find a Mike Tomlin. But the point is, like, there are a lot of situations where you could turn things around really, really quickly. And I think we'll get a little bit more into that on War Room, because I'd like to go through with you and kind of stack the Jets' job up compared to the expected openings around the league and talk about the roster. But it just goes to show you, like, they won't be coming into an absolute empty situation, but mentally, I think they have a lot of work to do on that front.
All right, everybody, another post-game therapy in the books. Check back tomorrow. Other guys, new flight plan, and then on the feed Tuesday for our War Room, and then on the feed Wednesday for our next podcast. We'll be back. Talking to you soon.